Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 22nd Board Budget Subcommittee meeting. So, Mr. Battle, was there any public comments today?
Not that I'm aware of, Rice. Did we get any public comment that you're aware of?
No, I did not get any public comments.
Okay.
Okay. I suppose everybody is focused on back to school. Okay, then let's walk down the various items here. Trustee Zhang and student board member Khan, do we have specific topics that you want to start with here?
I don't have particularly something urgent.
Yeah,
okay.
I think we can go down the list.
Okay, then let's go through the list here. Let's get to the consent calendar. The items that have any budget implication are, I suppose, item 10.1. So this is to renew the site license. And Superintendent Kamak, you had explained to me what this license is for. But this is just a renewal, right? And
yes, this is the same program I believe that we've used in prior summers. I think we used it last summer for our credit recovery program for our secondary courses.
okay. And is there a price change compared to last year?
I don't have that information in front of me. I would like to say that there's not, but I would guess that in the market, we're probably seeing some sort of increase year over year. So I don't know if there's been a substantive change other than what might be a normal increase year over year.
Okay. And then I see that there's a APICS virtual training here. It says 6 hours to train teachers. So how is this done? Is this like part of the PD time for teachers?
Yes, I believe that is part of the summer school work year, for lack of a better term, but that is part of the summer school program.
Okay. Okay. So
I just want to clarify one question. So the reason for the training is maybe we have different teachers to teach this class, and that's why we need the training.
Yes, and perhaps they didn't use the program last year because we may not have the same exact teachers for summer school year over year.
Right, okay.
Okay. So just a comment here would be that when we have such renewals, knowing what the delta between last year price and this year would be interesting to keep handy on the main page. Then, so the NPS, going to item 10.2, this is a small dollar amount, and this is probably because some additional service is needed for that one student. Anybody has a question on this? No? Then moving on to the next one, 10.3. So here there's no budget implication. So we can move on to the independent contractors. Again, this is a small amount. I forget what this thing was about.
So this is a contract for independent assessments with Dr. Karina Grandison, and yes. Dr. Grandison is very well known throughout the Bay Area in terms of independent educational assessments. And the contract is just under $20,000. And this is for 3 different assessments for students within the district.
Okay.
Here, one thing I want to also for Superintendent Kamick. Uh, so this is kind of a routine, right? Because we constantly receive this kind of a evaluation expense.
It can be routine. What can happen, especially within the parameters of special education, is that we may have the need to contract out for assessments on occasion. There may
Mhm.
also be the need based on difference of opinions about assessment results to have an outside independent assessment done as well. And so it's very common, not just for our school district, but for school districts across the state, because that is one of the parameters that exists within the special education laws to seek an independent evaluation when there's a disagreement regarding the assessment results. But our very competent and successful school psychologists do a great job. And sometimes we need additional support or there's a need for an independent evaluation.
Last time I think maybe it's a month ago, we also have similar things. Are we using the same service, Dr. Karina, or some other service?
It will sometimes depend on the nature of the assessment. So sometimes if there's an independent assessment need based on different opinions regarding an assessment report, we might use somebody like Dr. Grandison. Sometimes there will be other specific areas of assessment where another specialist might be more appropriate if it's perhaps related to mental health. So it may depend on what the scope of the assessment is, but this would be a pretty common assessment program. And there are also different agencies that may provide support as well. So not
Mhm.
every time that we want to use one agency will they have availability.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Then moving on to 11.2, quarterly investment report. This is this high dollars here. Mr. Battle, you want to explain to everybody on this investment and the
Oh,
return?
I don't want to steal anything away from our director of accounting. He loves to talk about this quarterly investments. So you want to tell them what the report is. It's only an information item. There is no budget implication.
Sure.
But Robbie or Rice, you guys want to?
So as you said, Marcus, this is a quarterly routine report that we bring to Board of Education every quarter. So what we do is we present the cash that has been invested by the Alameda County Treasurer's Office. They provide this monthly report to their own board of education, their own board of trustees, and then in turn we get this information that just summarizes how much return we get from all the cash we keep in the county office banks. Routine item just provides information about the return we're getting on the cash that we have. It also provides the amount of cash we have in the bank, and that's all funds combined. As you can see, that is a huge cash amount, $231 million. And most of that cash, or a big chunk of that cash, is facilities funds. Mayor cash is the biggest chunk in this case. General fund has a large amount of cash. We get a return on that because it's a pool of many funds in the county office.
So in this, so the total amount here probably hasn't changed much between last report and this report. How is the annualized rate of return changing?
So we take average of monthly return on the number of days invested. So basically our cash does not change that much from one time period to another time period because we are constantly getting cash from the county office and from all the sources we have. The monthly apportionments we get against LCFF and other sources. So the cash comes in and goes out, but we just maintain an average of cash, which is always about $230 million because it's a monthly cash flow that we maintain. Uh, the investment is calculated on monthly basis, but based on the ed code, we provide average rate of return for 3
Okay.
months.
No, the question that, I mean, if you end up spending, if you write a big check for one of the projects, and this cash will go down, or
Yes.
the Measure E funds.
Absolutely correct. For example, our facilities funds that we have, Measure E, we are writing, every month we are writing big checks. We are making payments to contractors, builders, different sources. At the same time, when payroll hits, payroll is one of the biggest expense. On a monthly basis, whenever we run the payroll, our cash goes down. But at the same time, on a monthly basis, we are getting our monthly apportionments from the state.
That's
So
it.
that balances out.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Now, at some point, Measure E funds would be all used up, right? And then, but how far is that?
So we recently sold our Series D. So
Mhm.
we have received about $130 million.
Okay.
That's an increase in our cash in our banks. But yes, ultimately, all that cash is going to be used up when all the projects are completed, all the series have been issued. But
Mhm.
that has about, I think, 4 or 5 year cycle.
Okay. So we won't worry about it today. Thanks. Okay.
But I think that's good to know. I think we have spent maybe 50% of the Measure E, right? Just a rough number. It's 650,000 million, right? We have already spent or allocated close to half of it.
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah.
probably a little bit more than half, but probably about 60%, 55, 60% obligated.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Then moving to 11.3. So this is this is just the next phase spending.
Yeah, this is the next phase of spending for inspection services, and it's just showing what the total budget is for inspection services, and you can see that money is being allocated to several contractors as that school is being constructed, and inspection services are being provided. So shows that we still have about $537,000 to complete the remaining portions of the project.
Now, and up to this point, are we still, is every line item matching what we had planned, or is there
Yeah,
any variance?
I mean, we planned 1.185 million for inspections, and right now there is not a line. The inspection is the line item. So right
Oh,
now,
okay, okay. So you don't have like DSA inspection as a separate
no,
estimate. Okay,
no.
okay. Then any questions from anybody on this one?
Comment. It's hard to imagine that inspection would cost 1.18 million. Okay, Mr. Battle, right? You
Well,
look at it.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty expensive for inspections. So they do pre-inspection before we even start construction, just to make sure that everything is addressed, and even in pre-construction and pre-design. So we bring these guys on at pre-design all the way through, final completion. So it's pretty. And you just remember that Centerville is the one that's getting new construction plus modernization. So that's a pretty substantial project over there.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose the code for the school is much more involved, and that's why inspections are more lengthy and more detailed, perhaps. But you agree, well, I agree that 1.1 million or close to 1.2 million out of your overall budget, it's a significant portion. So yeah, for us who are seeing these numbers newly, this thing seems a bit out of whack, but I think it's all justified.
Right, but I also have another question. So when we use the labor, are we paying more for the market than the market rate? Oh,
Well,
let's say
well,
Mhm.
you're talking about based on our project labor agreement.
Yes. I mean, whether
Well, that
the
well,
labor hired by school are different than, industrial.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of debate of whether or not you are paying more if your district is part of a project labor agreement or not. I think it depends on who you ask, but I think from our last review of this, we are getting we believe that the rates are reasonable and are fair. Whether we would save money if we was in a project, if we were not, is hard to say.
Um, okay, my question is, let's say I am an individual company and I am going to hire someone to, to build a building. And then compare with, I'm a school, board. Now I'm going to hire someone to finish a building at school. So if there's exactly the same size, exactly material, do we actually have to pay more because of some kind of regulation? Like, we have to ensure some
Well,
extra safety.
I,
That's
I wouldn't frame it the way you just said. We are part of a project labor agreement, which basically ensures that the workers that are hired are paid a fair wage.
uh-huh.
Um, could we hire somebody that's not a part of a project labor agreement and they are hiring employees that are not getting a competitive wage? It is possible,
Oh,
but
I see.
yeah, so that's why I said it's really hard to answer your question, but we
Got it.
believe that the rates that we are being charged are reasonable.
So what is the term you just said? Project labor agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called project labor agreement. They may call
Okay.
it something different here, but that's the terminology I'm using, project labor
Okay,
agreement.
I'm going to write it down.
Yeah, we can discuss that one offline.
Okay.
So this is a topic that we can discuss for a while. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Then moving to 11.4, no budget implication here. And then 11.5. So this one,
This one, no budget.
no
No
budget.
dollar,
Yeah,
no dollar sign.
no dollar signs. So we like it when we are not spending money, right? So, okay, then 12.1, certificated personnel actions, no dollars there.
Oh wait, sorry, real quick. Could I jump in? Sorry, for 11.5.
Yeah.
So this one is for students as well, right? So is there anything in like SB or AB 86 about like students being mandated to get testing or yeah, what's kind of the state of that student testing?
Good question, Zion. There's not a mandate per se in AB 86 for student testing. There's a cadence recommended by the California Department of Public Health. But AB 86 says that if the district has their own safety plan approved by March 31st, then we can set our own parameters. So our prior contract with Valencia Branch Labs, as well as this contract with National Labs, would both provide for staff and student testing. And so what we're looking at is having this come forward as a contract, basically to serve as a supplement to Valencia Labs. So to the extent that we wanted to implement student testing, we have that option already. But what we don't want to do is implement our testing program, have something come up that may or may not be problematic. But if something is problematic, we want to have another option available to us right away. We don't want to start from ground zero. Or for example, if we start with Valencia Labs and there's a problem with getting the data turned around quickly enough from our test results, maybe we need to supplement with another provider as well. So that's why this is coming forward. And specific to the mandate for student testing, a student cannot be mandated to be tested. We would need the parent permission or guardian permission in order for a student to be tested. School districts can only make it available. They can't mandate that students are tested.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Trustee, just for the sake of time, all of section 12 is no financial impacts.
Yeah, that's what I saw. Okay, very good. Then let's go to 15.1. Now, there's no specific dollar amount here. I think the question that we had from some community member was, if you go back to the original decision, the class sizes are not getting all full, or the classes are not getting all full. So is there an assessed sort of budget impact because of that?
So I don't have a particular number on hand of a potential impact. I mean, I would have to defer to instructional services with where we are on the class sizes. But ultimately, we would, as we would in most cases, look at our enrollment projections and figure out how do we structure our classes based on our staffing ratios. So I don't know what we are currently using as the number to calculate per FTE. But when we look at class sizes, we want to try the best we can to keep them at the ratios established, because it is difficult when we have some classes down to 10, 12, 14, 15 students, but we're budgeting and planning for 24 to 1, 28 to 1, or 30 to 1, depending on the grade level. So there may be an implication there if our classes aren't filled out to the extent that we can. And that may result in, depending on the action that's taken, either an increase in not an increase from current staffing, but a recognition that those may be staffed at a lower ratio than our other programs, or do we reshuffle the assignments there in our combo classes ever needed? And that's not unique to any immersion program. That's happening at our elementary schools across the district as we look at the grade level enrollment and then the school enrollment, and how do we staff most appropriately based on those numbers.
Okay. Now, is this something that we could have for the actual board meeting? Or is that too much to ask for?
Oh, no, I think it would be fine. I think our instructional services team already has a good handle on the enrollment data for the program, both in the current year, and then they make the best projection they can rolling up to next year. So I'm confident they'll already have that information. If they were here with us today, they might have it in front of them at the moment.
Okay, perfect. Any questions, Trustee Zhang or Khan?
I think that it will be good for us to have it before Wednesday's decision, right?
We can send forward to the trustees the enrollment figures.
Yeah, because otherwise the status is the same from the last time we made a decision to now, and how we're going to decide differently.
Well, we have all the overall enrollment numbers. In the prior circumstance, we did not discuss it per classroom assignment, but we certainly have all of the overall enrollment numbers already captured in this SDI presentation, but not broken down by grade level by classroom. And so when we look at it,
we have the number, but I mean, are we in the process of actually based on the number and consolidate different classes, from the, let's say 10 or 12 into 26, or we are still not done yet? So if we're not, you see, the direction can go to different ways. We can talk maybe later on this. That would be really helpful, I think.
Yes, and I'm sure that our assistant superintendent has that information ready. And ultimately, some of that may depend on the decision about how the program is or is not moved, because that may impact the overall enrollment. It could impact class sizes. So there's a lot of variables there, but I know that our instructional services team is on top of that.
Okay.
Sounds good. Now 15.2, there's all kinds of budget implications here based on, or let's say cash flow implications when we get back to school and such. So this is a complex topic. Any specific questions on this one? No. So my understanding is all the PPE and the funding for getting ready from a safety perspective, that's fully funded, and perhaps at this point we have all the PPE and everything that you planned for to be available for in-person instruction, that's already all procured and available, right?
Yes, the CARES Act dollars that we already received were used to purchase that PPE. They were used to purchase our air purification units and a number of the other things that we've done to get our facilities ready. And so that's where a lot of our funding has already come from, is the prior CARES Act dollars. And I think maybe Marcus can speak to the PPE. I know we've had a lot in stock since the beginning of the school year, and we have kept most of that internally at the warehouse because we want to keep it in one location until we distribute it out to all the sites closer to when the students are actually going to return. So I know there's a lot of materials and supplies going out to school sites, and I think the PPE has already been delivered to a number of sites. Perhaps Mr. Battle has information on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what you said, CJ. I mean, a lot's been delivered, a lot is still in the warehouse, and the focus now has been signage. There's still some final signage that we are assisting with the sites with, and that's on being purchased now. But everything else that we've been made aware of that's needed for reopening has been ordered or is on order and will be available soon.
Okay. Sounds good. So, I mean, I suppose our marching orders is to be fully ready for the 29th, assuming all the agreements are done. Right? So,
I have one question. So for the 86, is that in order to get the governor's funding, the elementary school has to open and at least one secondary school, one grade has to open. Is that right?
That's correct, but there's an added element as well. So you're correct, Trustee Zhang, that all of our TK through sixth grade programs need to open. And at least one secondary grade level needs to open. But in addition to those two parameters, there is a third requirement, that is all students K through 12 who fall into specific groupings as identified by Assembly Bill 86 also have to be provided the opportunity for in-person instruction. And so even though at the secondary level, it would say just one grade level, it is also mandated that we provide that opportunity for the student population specified in AB 86.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, those disadvantaged or homeless, right, et cetera, right?
Yes, those are examples of those some of those subgroups.
So, okay, here's another question. So let's say we open school at March 29 for elementary K to 6, and then we open secondary school, let's say at a later date. So the funding comes from at a later date, right?
That's correct. The funding, we qualify for the funding when we meet all of the criteria, not a partial criteria. So if we start elementary, let's say March 29th, and we meet all the other criteria for secondary, maybe April 19th, then we would start qualifying based on April 19th. And the gap between the 29th and the 19th is roughly 1% of the 10.2 million for every instructional day. So holidays such as the spring break are not going to count in that total. So it'll be from April 1st and beyond, where the 1% would decrease each day. But once we meet all the criteria of TK through 6, at least one secondary grade, and all the specific subgroups, then we would qualify for the funding at that point.
Okay, that is very important for the public to know as well. Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, then moving on to the next one, 15.3. There's a $350,000 in cost here for summer school planning. So will this come out of the new money that we are getting for learning loss?
So it will likely be a combination of two funds, one being our LCFF funding, because we would have our extended school year and credit recovery programs that we would operate in a normal non-pandemic existence. And then there's also AB 86, which in case our community is watching, you may see it also sometimes as SB 86 because the bill is sometimes referred to from the Assembly or the Senate, but it's AB 86 or SB 86. And that funding that we qualify for from the state will also supplement some of the programs that we're looking at providing this summer.
Okay, and this is where we had a brief discussion in the last board meeting. So can we tap into, I mean, as we do some learning loss recovery program, can we tap into private organizations that could help here?
It would really depend on what those organizations are and the services that they were providing. So we would have to really look closely at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So I mean, there have been a lot of suggestions against through the community about online high schools, MIT sort of curriculum for high schools. So there are many of these established, some are for cost, some are no cost, or Khan Academy. There are many of these that we can tap into. Given, I mean, my expectation is that learning loss, as we do some assessments, will turn out to be some significant amount, right? And trying to recover that just with our own resources, maybe over constraining ourselves. So, but that's maybe a separate discussion. My only question here was if we were to be looking to augment our resources, can we do that, and how would we do that? So we can take this as an offline conversation. Okay. The next one, there's no budget impact here. So 15.5, again, no budget implication there. So 15.7 is the one where we have the next budget implication, right? So we've talked about this many times. Is there any, I mean, this one has just been carried over for the last two board meetings. Right? Any questions on this item? No? Then let's see.
Oh, actually, I had
Yeah.
a question on this other one. So, for the on the 10th slide on the presentation, it lists like the 3 potential options that we could go through. So the first one, like to me, it seems like there's no negatives and that's like the maximum savings. So are there any like downsides to going with the PPA?
Which slide are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Slide number 10, the procurement methods and savings.
Right, and you were saying what's the downside to the first option?
Yeah, so because it seems like it maximizes savings and it's like no initial contribution and that type of stuff.
I mean, and that's going to be presented on Wednesday, but I mean, that we like that option because the district does not have to put out any funding or resources to get the savings. So you can see based on the, and I don't know if folks are watching this, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can see based on the chart that you're looking at that the savings come in different ways. Mm-hmm. If we put out all the capital at first, then we get more savings because we've already put out but in the other scenario where we are in a repayment mode, we are, I don't want to say a repayment, but we are, some of our investment is being absorbed by the savings. So our savings are not growing as fast, but at the same time, as I said, we're not putting out any upfront cash. So I would imagine and they're going to go into this is very detailed. So, I mean, I think that probably Wednesday, we'll have a consultant, they'll go into it in more detail. but you can see the different cash flows there, savings, that it presents different scenarios on savings. But as I said, I think any scenario where we don't have to put out a sizable amount of money from our general fund or from our capital funds is something that we're probably going to be more leaning toward, and we should be. But,
Actually, I do have a question. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like I don't really understand like this type of stuff, so I'm just kind of wondering.
Okay.
and Kelly, we're talking about the solar item, and actually the PowerPoint slide, slide 10.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. So I do have a question. So for residential solar panels, the duration that we talk about is 25 years for warranty and whatever power output guarantees and things like that. So here I see 20 years, and because the system gets amortized much faster, the savings increase for direct purchase later in the cycle, right? So is that, so here, is it like a 20-year program or is it different than the residential ones? That would be the question.
Oh, yes, it is a different program. So the residential marketplace versus the commercial marketplace, the products are actually different. And because the systems that we are using for our sites are actually more robust than you would have in your residential panels that are applied at your home. So the amount of energy that's consumed as well as expended, it's almost like it's accelerated because of the sheer volume of, numbers and usage compared to what you would do at your home. So that's part of it. But as Associate Superintendent stated, the consultants will be available on Wednesday, and we'll be able to really drill down deeply into any of the detailed questions that you all have. I don't want to misspeak and provide you all with the wrong scenario if, that's not exactly what you were asking for. So
good point. We'll save our questions for the consultant on that day.
I have one things to give to Zion. Zion, you said which one is it's better. I think in the nutshell, it's like you buy a car. Let's say you buy a car for $30,000. If you have $30,000 cash, you buy it. That's the best. But if you don't have $30,000, you're going to pay monthly interest, right? Whatever monthly fee, and you probably spend 5 years to buy it. In the end, your total cost would be $50,000. So am I right, Mrs. Battle, Mr. Battle?
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean,
right. So it's just that whether you have money, to put down your initial deposit or something. Yeah, if you don't, you will have to pay.
Yeah, so like you said, the more money you can put out, your cost of borrowing is going to be a lot less over the term of the loan. So in scenario A, in scenario A is an interesting one, and that's why we really want folks to take a look at that, because it requires no outlay from the district.
Well, the other thing also is that option A gives us full service. So we are not servicing the equipment that they are actually installing. Whereas if we purchase it, and if we provide any means by which we have ownership prior to the turnover period, we're responsible for the maintenance and operation of it. And so that was one of the reasons why when I met with Associate Superintendent Battle and Spur, they encouraged us to take advantage of this because that particular option will be going away very soon. And so for us not to have capital outlay, as well as have maintenance and operations throughout the service of the life of the agreement, it's a no-brainer for us because we spend so much money on maintenance and operations that if that's included and we don't have to be responsible for the actual equipment, that's like golden for the district.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Then let's see. So then the next one that has a budget impact is 1510, right? So the fencing, this one, this is an action agenda item. Right?
Yeah. This one is the cost is embedded in measure E, spread out in all
Right.
projects.
Yes, so this one, I suppose we discussed in detail again last time, so we can have a board discussion on Wednesday.
Correct, but there is no expense that's being asked
No cost
associated with this item. Because these are already included in the cost of the construction for the programs that at each site.
Yeah, so it's already part of the plan, right? You're
Yes.
just trying to get
Yes.
approval for that plan here.
Yes.
Okay. And then 1511, this is a $1.5 million impact. Now this is to close out the project, right?
So
No.
Rick's is
Wait, I'm sorry.
Rick's is the early learning center that we are doing a conversion on. Previously, the Stratford School was there, and they left because they, procured their own site, and it's been vacant. And so there was a decision made to use it as the early learning center back in 2018. So since we have since started on the design and modernization of that facility, when the initial decision and the initial budget was made, it was based on 2018, 2019 dollars in terms of budget and scope.
Mhm.
Since that time, we've met with the site staff that will be managing the site, as well as did, site investigation and new feasibilities. And in the process of us doing that, we have encountered budget increases and what we call scope creep. And so the scope that I identified in that item are all items that we have to do in terms of being in compliance for one, California Department of Education, but also the city of Fremont has placed requirements on us that were different than the previous owner, or I guess the previous person who leased the site. We initially went in thinking that we could assume a lot of the grandfathered clauses of compliance that they had, but the city said, no, sorry, we changed everything in 2020, and this is what we're requiring you to do now. And so we have met with them on many, many occasions and have whittled down to this list now that you all see of what is necessary for us to complete the project and actually have everything that is necessary in terms of program support and facility support in the building to be able to provide the space for the early learning center.
So that's like a 25% increase.
Yes, it's a huge increase.
Because
So
of
two of the very big items that are on that list is the roof and the HVAC system. So originally the HVAC system, we could have gotten away with it and we could have done minor modifications, but since we're now required to comply with higher standards, the existing systems that are there cannot be modified, and we actually have to upgrade them in order to meet the current standards that we have to abide by post-COVID-19. So, and then the roof, because one of the things with roofs, when buildings are not occupied, and I always refer to buildings as living, breathing entities, when they're not cared for and they're not occupied, they're not living and breathing. So it has a tendency to sag, deteriorate, and get moisture in places that it's not supposed to. And in this particular case, we had 4 very major roof leaks that were not attended to because no one was there in the facility to address it. And we wouldn't have known about it because nobody's there. But when we've gone through and done our spot checks periodically every couple months, we discovered that there's quite a bit of dry rot and deteriorated material, that originally was not accounted for, that now we have to fully replace and take care of. So that's kind of one of those things that we just, you don't know till you know.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I suppose this is one of those, it is what it is. And now, out of the box thinking, when we when we create a program like this, and there's a plan, can we buy some insurance against some of these sort of creeps that happen? I mean, roof replacement and HVAC replacement, those are items that can happen. But I see over and over again that DSA, their inspection, the amount keeps going up, right? In the last 3 months, I've looked at so many of those. So
well, part of, and I don't want to always use the, well, you know, it's kind of what DSA does, but because Fremont facilities are so old, you know, that's part of our challenge, is that a lot of our facilities are more than 40 years old. And a lot of times, because we've done such a good job in maintaining these older facilities, on the outside, they look wonderful. But when you start to pull back the skin and really dive into some of these building systems, because they are old, because they've never been modified, we've always maintained our compliance throughout the years. But when you, according to DSA standards, when we remove or dive into more than 25% of the overall building sort of square footage and capacity, it triggers a whole different set of requirements that you wouldn't necessarily have to do if you were just doing minor cosmetic repairs. And so that's part of our challenge, is that our buildings are old. We're really diving in and expanding in terms of the modernization that we're doing. And it's almost like Pandora's box. You know, we're opening up and getting into these older facilities, and we just have no idea kind of what's going to come at us when we get there.
Well, okay. Now with this, so we'll have to discuss in the meeting about this. Any other questions on this item?
Here's the question. You said that there's two major items. Is that already included in this 1.9 million, or we are still waiting?
No, those are included in there.
Okay. So the difference, you know, but thank you, Kelly, for write down this comparison. It's so much clearer now. And so at the time that the initial estimate versus the other one, the second column, there is a much different. It's because after we opened the box, now we saw all these things.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, that's it. So when you see this HVAC, it's because now we cannot leave those things on the roof. We have to do this new modern HVAC.
So the new HVAC systems, so the current systems met the current standards for when they were installed. Most of the systems that are on that roof are more than 10 years old. So based on the code at that time that they were installed, they were fine.
Okay.
Because our code requirements for ventilation and circulation have changed post-COVID, even those systems, if we were to modify them, the cost of the modification, as well as the cost to modify it to meet the new standard, far exceeds the value of us doing a full replacement. So it's cheaper for us to actually fully replace those systems with systems that will comply with the new standards than to try and fix what we already have, if that makes sense.
Yes. So so then that's after COVID, we have a new standard. Is that right?
Well, in 2020, the International Building Code standards changed. And that is what we are now designing all of our systems to. And the code changes every 2 years. So we always try and kind of stay ahead of the curve, but we will be in full compliance for the current requirements of 2020 code standards when we finish this job.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Then moving to the next one, 15.12. So this is to authorize the next phase of construction.
Yes, that is correct.
And I see that this is authorizing the entire budgeted amount, nothing more than that.
That is correct. So this is the construction phase portion of this particular project. And the amount that we are requesting is the amount that is left to complete. And this will be the construction portion of the project for us to in terms of our budget that we'll be working with to complete the project.
Right. And we have not dipped into any of the contingencies yet.
We have not at this time.
Yeah.
And
that's-
so, as I had shared with you all before, I've been pushing our construction managers and our design teams to actually design to the budget. And so what you guys are seeing is the first project to actually come right in line with what it is that we had specified in the budget that we had allocated. So we're kind of right on target on this particular one.
That's great, right? If we don't have to dip in, I mean, what we see is that we come in at 100% of contingency or maybe a little bit over, right? So if you end up not using it, that'll be a great achievement.
Well, that's my hope.
Well, you're doing great, thanks. Okay, then if there are no further questions, we have only 5 more minutes. So the next one, DSA, this is again for the same Centerville. So why are these 2 separate ones? These are 2 separate, one is with the builder, the other one is with DSA.
Right, it's two different vendors. So we were showing those items separately as showing how the funds are being allocated to each contractor individually, but showing you in the total how it impacts the total.
Yeah, so that the attachment is common. Well,
Right.
the attachment doesn't have the construction total updated. So maybe it'll be good to have both it's actually updated. So the
It is.
dollars are already there. Okay, I stand corrected. So I don't have any specific questions on this. If there are no further questions, we go to the last item, 15.14. This will be a long meeting again, I suppose, on Wednesday. So.
And once again, this one's
same thing.
Same thing. You can see that the budget for testing of 1.1 million and the phase 1 being described there as original contract, and then with more work for more phases. But the total remaining budget to complete is all of the work in between is totally within the budget for the project.
Now, a procedural question, Superintendent Kamak, can these 3 get put in one consent item so that we can talk about all 3 together and be done with it instead of opening each one?
I don't think they can be combined into one item because they're different contracts, and the threshold for consent for Fremont Unified, perhaps Mr. Battle has that information. I think if it exceeds a certain amount, our direction has been to put it on the regular agenda.
Okay. Sounds good.
But we do believe that items that are like this, that are within budget, maybe the board should consider at some point revising that guideline, because we do think that these items seem to take up some time during the board meeting, and they are well within the budget for the project. So maybe that's something to consider at another time.
I mean, that's maybe a procedure enhancement proposal that you can bring to the agenda at some point. But we'll see. We'll ask President Sweeney to get public comment on all 3 items together, and maybe we can then discuss together and vote individually to optimize. But I suppose we are at 5:58. That completes all of the items here. Any final questions or comments from anyone? No? Okay, well, we'll finish on time. Thanks, everyone. You all have a good evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thanks, everybody.
on Wednesday.